Manager here for Butler Arts Center's Clowes Memorial Hall. It's a pleasure to have you all here. We expect a few more people to be coming in, so we'll let them take the seats down front. We have a really interesting evening planned for you in the next hour, our conversation series. And to kick it off, I'd like to introduce our moderator. That was the term. Our moderator for the evening, who is the Art Mix President and CEO, Gayle Holtman. Please help me welcome her.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, James, and thanks to Clowes for hosting us. We're really glad to be here and glad to see all of you. You're welcome to move down front and have the latecomers sit in the back. So, show of hands. How many people have heard of Art Mix and or familiar with what we do? Awesome. I love it. All right. So for those of you who are new to Art Mix, here's what you need to know. We are a nationally award-winning nonprofit organization based here in Indianapolis. And for over 35 years, we've been serving people with disabilities by providing access to the arts. And we invite you to our gallery, which is located at 16th and Delaware, if you've not already been there, inside the Harrison Center. It's easy to find. We have lots of free parking. And you're welcome anytime, but especially on the first Friday of each month when we host an exhibit opening and a reception and a free art-making activity. It's a good time. And we'd really appreciate it if, before you leave tonight, you would complete a survey, share your thoughts. And when you do complete the survey, we have a little coupon for 10% off a purchase in our gallery. And some of the items that are available for purchase are on display at the table right at the entry door, in case you're wondering what's there. So the month of March, as you may know, is Disability Awareness Month. And the theme this year is Be Cool, We Are. And so what does this mean? Well, one way to think about this is that being around someone with a disability shouldn't make us uncomfortable. But if it does, just remember to be yourself and relax and be cool. And remember that a person with a disability is first and foremost just a person, just like you. I want to share a little story about this. When I was working with a woman many years ago, Jeannie, who is legally blind, on my very first day, at the end of that day, I said, "Bye, Jeannie, see you later." And she's legally blind, and I thought, oh my God, I just stuck my foot in my mouth, and I felt really dumb. And she didn't think anything of it because it didn't mean anything to her. She said back to me, "I'll see you later." So you might have had already in your life experiences like that where you thought, oh, I just stuck my foot in my mouth. But all I needed to do and all you need to do is just relax and remember the person you're talking to is another human being. So tonight, we're happy to present this panel. We've got 4 college women who have some perspectives and stories to share around this intersection of art and disability. And so let me briefly introduce our speakers to you. So we have the manager for community outreach at Art Mix and a graduate student at UIndy, Katie Dedmond. Then we have a former Art Mix intern and a senior at Franklin College, Annalise Lowry. And then we have a current Art Mix intern, you see a theme here, and a sophomore at Butler University, Ellie Ugama. And then we have Erica Thomason, who is a mom to an Art Mix student and a Nina Mason Pulliam Scholar at IUPUI. So please join me in welcoming our speakers tonight. So we have a list of questions to guide our conversation. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. James will bring the microphone to you so we can all hear your question. Or if you would prefer to write your question down, there are pens and little note cards that you can do, and you can turn that in to Kathy here in the purple, or Linda there in the back in the gray waving her hand, or you can walk it up to me. So, first of all, just to warm up and check our mics and kind of get through all of that, let's have each speaker introduce herself. So, ladies, would you tell us your name, tell us your hometown or where you're from, and then tell us either what you had for lunch today, or if that was not terribly inspiring or good, what you hope to have for lunch tomorrow. So, Katie, start us off.
Repeat that.
Name.
Okay.
Okay. Name, hometown, lunch.
Okay, great. So I'm Katie Dudmont. I'm from Moline, Illinois, and I did not have an exciting lunch today, so I'm hoping to have Chipotle tomorrow. Yes.
Okay, hi. My name is Annalise Lowry. I'm from here in Indy. I live like 5 minutes away from here, or I was raised 5 minutes away from here. And I had a double cheeseburger for lunch. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Ellie Ugama. I'm from the suburbs of Detroit, and I had a Cobb salad for lunch today.
Hi, I'm Erica Thomason. I am from Lebanon, Indiana, which is about 30 minutes northwest of here. And I had a bowl of chili from IUPUI campus today.
Sounds good. Great. All right, well, so let's get started. And we don't have to always go in order. If you feel particularly drawn to a question or a thought that pops up, feel free to just take control of the mic. But the first thing we wanted to have you talk to us about is the role of disability in your life. So can one of you get us going on that conversation? What role does disability play in your life?
So when I was 20 years old, I had twins, twin boys, born just at 26 weeks gestation. They weighed a little over a pound each. And they were in the hospital for a very long time, as you can imagine. As they began to hit milestones and develop, it became very clear that there were a lot of developmental delays. And then it also became very clear that one of the twins was developing at a much faster rate than the other. So first, the role that disability played in my life was coming to terms with knowing that your child will deal with a disability throughout their entire life. Then you kind of go into a mode of all of the treatments and the surgeries and the interventions and the therapies. So it's played a really large role in my life. And when I was 37, I decided that I was going to college for the first time. Initially, I wanted to study nursing because I really wanted to play a role with people who had children in long-term healthcare settings. That turned into and morphed into social work. So it not only has been a part of my life that kind of guided and almost took over for 20 years. Isaiah and Andrew now actually will be, oh my gosh, 21 on August 10th, which is crazy to me. But it's become an integral part of who I am and who I've developed to be, not just because of the label of the disability, but because of the perspective it gives you as you're going through life, helping your children to grow and become, the best version of themselves that they can possibly be. So
I can go next. My parents had my sister in 1986. They were both 20. And she was born totally healthy, but after she got a vaccine, she had a allergic reaction and contracted spinal meningitis, which did a lot of brain damage. So she has always had, once she got past like 4 or 5, she's always had the mentality of about a 5-year-old. And she's also epileptic. So I grew up with her. She's now 31, and I am 7 years younger. So I grew up with her, and that was totally normal for me to grow up with someone with a disability. And then when I was in 3rd grade, I was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. So disability has been a big part of my life. I think it's really led me to my career path, working for a nonprofit, and specifically one that works with people with disabilities. I always knew that I wanted to help people and do something to give back to people. And now working at ArtMix, I also have that component. So I work with a lot of our students, and I've gotten to know them, and it's great to get to know them and learn their stories.
Okay, so my freshman year in college, I went to Ball State University, and towards the end of the semester, I got a normal concussion, and I was about 80 to 90% better from it the night before my first week of finals, and that night, my roommate, long story short, she kicked me in the forehead with the bone of her right heel really, really hard. It felt like a baseball was being pitched at me like 80 miles per hour. And I don't really remember what else happened that night, but I was bleeding pretty bad, and I kind of like passed out, and it was really bad. And that concussion gave me a concussion for 10 months straight. And after the 10 months period, I got diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury. And I went through a ton of doctors and therapies, and finally got the right doctors and like physical therapists and psychiatrists that I needed. But what I have now, I had the traumatic brain injury for a total of 3 years, and I just overcame it. So what I have now is I have something called post-concussive syndrome. So I always have different types of headaches, whether that's like on top of my head or on the side of my head, and it can get triggered a lot. So here and then I'll have random anxiety disorder or random anxiety attacks. But so what I have and what I deal with is called post-concussive syndrome, and I have a type of OCD related to head anxiety, and I used to not understand where my head was in space when I was walking, so I had to relearn how to walk and like do normal things that made no sense to me at the time. And I would get like these weird thoughts that I would hurt myself or that I hit my head all the time, and I wouldn't understand where I was or what was going on. So I've gotten through that, and I'm in the recovery process from after my traumatic brain injury. And I have learning disabilities with reading and test taking too that's related to my OCD.
So I have what is considered a physical disability. When I was born, the doctor injured the nerves in my neck, and it's resulted in a partial paralysis of my shoulder, arm, and hand. It's called a brachial plexus palsy. And it's something that I've had to deal with my whole life, and will never be fixed. I've been seeing doctors my whole life, therapy every year. I have to keep up with, exercises. I don't have the same range of motion as other people. Strength. My arm didn't grow for the first 2 months that I was born. So it's definitely something that I've had to deal with. I am reminded of it, I think, when I go to put my hand on my heart. I can't put my hand on my heart. Or when I try and raise my hand in class, I can't straighten it all the way, so I have to raise my other hand. I know that it's something that I'm going to have for the rest of my life, but I've never let it stop me from doing something that I've wanted to do.
Thank you for sharing all of that. All of these stories, I didn't know them all myself, is I think one of the things that's very interesting, and we do talk about this in the work of ArtMix, is that disability is so multifaceted, and so disability can be visible, but it also can be invisible. I know there are quite a few Butler students here that know Ellie, So you may have already known this about her, but you know, I think hopefully that's a learning for us all, is that disability can be manifested in many forms, and you might not know it to look at someone, right? Okay, great, thank you. So let me ask the next question. For those with a disability, how does your disability define you, or do you think that it does define you? And if you have a loved one with a disability, do you believe it defines them?
I'll jump on this one. So I don't think that my disability defines me at all as a person. I define myself, and I don't let my disability define me. I think it's definitely affected my life. It affects my daily routines, putting clothes on differently or doing my hair differently because I can't raise my hand. And it's affected my perspective on life. I feel like I'm a more determined person because I, in the past, have had to work harder on things, at different physical things than other people might have. I remember distinctly in 5th grade, I was a cheerleader. And this one boy came up to me and told me, well, you can't be a cheerleader, you can't raise your arm. And I said, well, I'm going to do it anyways. And I think that that's the kind of mindset that I've had this whole time, and that's why I don't think that my disability defines me.
So just like Ellie said, I don't think my disability defines me. I used to, the first year or two that I had my brain injury, and I would always be embarrassed if I did something in public that was related to OCD or was something that made me anxious and I had to do something about it. But I used to let the thoughts inside of my head that are related to my OCD try to control me. But as I had more therapy, over time I started controlling my own thoughts, and I started defining myself and who I am and trying to be myself and the new, better person that I wanted to be. But I try not to let anybody say that my injury defines me or tell me that I can't do anything. I was a volleyball player before my brain injury, and we won state at my high school, and volleyball was my life, and I never thought that I'd be able to play volleyball again. But last month, I started being able to do a couple drills here and there, and I started coaching. So you really shouldn't let anything define you, no matter how hard or how low you've been in life, because you can always come back from it, and you can always fight whatever's inside of you that's evil.
So I wouldn't say that my disability defines me, but I've really embraced it. Like people call me KDD with ADD. I'm KDD with ADD. Yeah. So I know that that's a part of who I am, and I've fully embraced I have attention deficit disorder, and I will always have it. It's just part of me, but I don't think that it necessarily defines me. But since I had it from such an early age, it was always just a big part of my life. And then with my sister, I think it's hard to say whether or not her disability defines her, but it is a really big part of who she is. Everyone who knows me knows my sister Abby is the one with a disability. They know the funny stories that I tell about her, the weird things that she does, and how goofy she is. So, and I think, part of who she is because of her disability. So it's hard to say that it doesn't define her, but it's definitely a big part of who she is.
So I'm going to kind of piggyback on what Katie said about for my boys, and I didn't mention this initially, but their diagnosis is cerebral palsy, but also Isaiah was diagnosed with PDD-NOS, which basically is pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified. When you're a mom and you're chasing a diagnosis because you think if you get a diagnosis, then you can figure out how to fix it, right? That's not the case, and of course I learned that through my years of learning about cerebral palsy and PDD-NOS. I would say that Isaiah's disability, again, like Katie said, it doesn't define him, but it is part of who he is. Developmentally, there are some areas where he functions like a 13 or 14-year-old, and there are some areas where he functions like probably a 7-year-old. It will forever be a part of who he is, but we don't allow that to define who he is or where he's headed in life. It's just a piece of his personality.
Great, thank you. Again, if you have any questions that are popping up in your head because of all these comments, please raise your hand or write them down on a note card. So let's talk about the arts. So what role has the arts played in your life?
Anyone want to start? I can. Okay. So I don't have a ton of experience in the arts. At least not like formal training. I took art classes throughout like elementary school, middle school, and high school, but I didn't really do much with it in college. But once I actually got to Art Mix, I really started exploring and trying new things. So I've been doing a lot of painting, and my roommates are laughing because they know my room is full of paint and canvases and paper, and it's crazy. So before I worked at Art Mix, I would not have said that I was an artist by any means, but I think now I would maybe start to say I'm somewhat of an artist. So yeah.
So for me, art honestly helped me get back on my feet and find myself in the middle of a crazy hurricane in my life. When I went to Ball State, I was actually an exercise science major, and then I transferred to Franklin College, and I was forced to take a semester off that year, and I had to go to a Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, and I had to rest as much as I could. And I found out searching online about something called art therapy, and I had never heard of art therapy, and I got really, really interested in it. So I talked to my parents, and I decided to change my major to studio art and minor in psychology. And I had trouble at Ball State my second semester with both of my concussions. It made me homesick, and I really didn't like the town of Muncie isn't like that beautiful, and it's kind of weird, but it didn't, like, the campus is really pretty, but like Muncie kind of, yeah. So anyways, that would make me like really homesick that semester I was there, and I hated being there. Like I loved the school and everything, but I just had this traumatic experience that I had there. And being able to start to create art and like get into art really helped myself in a therapeutic way, and opened my eyes to like the creation of anybody can be an artist really. And it helped me blossom in different relationships that I had, and for people to help understand me more as a person, and I was able to communicate through my art instead of words when I really couldn't talk about what I was going through. So it saved me, and I really strive to be some type of art therapist someday, maybe specialize in concussions, but I want to be able to help other people and save them through art, like the way that art helped save me.
So art started for me. My mom put me in dance class when I was 4 or 5 years old, and it was originally for therapy, to exercise my arm, and I ended up doing theater as well because she said I was too shy and needed to break out of my shell. So I was doing dance and theater, all because of my mom, and I ended up loving both of them, and joining choir in high school. So I was doing dance, theater, choir. I ended up doing a lot of musical theater in high school, and although I've not been able to continue that performance-based art, it's really led me to where I am today. Because I'm an arts administration major, I still do a little bit of each in classes, and if not for the art that I had been exposed to in high school, I wouldn't have found Butler, and I wouldn't have found the major and possibly a future career. So yeah.
So for me, as you can probably imagine, life was kind of hectic and stressful for a lot of years. And I had always considered myself to be creative, but I never would have really called myself an artist. And I think Gayle asked me this question a couple of years ago, if I would consider myself an artist. And I was like, no, not really. I just, I like taking pictures and stuff. And then I really kind of started looking at some of the classes I was taking at IUPUI. So I did the wheel throwing class, I did painting. For me, it was sort of this outlet, therapeutic, kind of like Annalise. Annalise? Okay. And I didn't realize that I was an artist, but I'm an artist. I'm not an artist that's like putting work out there for sale. It's not my primary goal, but it's a part of who I am. It's a part also of what has given Isaiah an ability to connect to places in the world where his twin brother, so Andrew is the other twin, he's going to IUPUI this year as a freshman. Isaiah's still doing vocational programming, life skills, and he's watching his twin brother. They're kind of veering apart a little bit in their worlds. And so Art Mix came into the picture and gave Isaiah his own identity. And it was really the first job he had and the first connection he had to this independent world where we would just drop him off and off he would go. So it was fantastic. So I think that like art has played a role for so many years. And I've come to the conclusion that I think we're all artists. It may look different for each one of us, but I think every single person is an artist in some way. So.
I was going to ask you all about that, whether you consider yourself an artist, and what maybe, Erica, you can continue that conversation about what you mean by I am an artist, because I think there's in the general community maybe a more rigid or standard idea of what that means. So
Sure.
What does that mean to you?
So for me, the way I look at it is I'm an artist of my own life and my own world. So art is creation to me, and we create every day with choices we make, with interactions we have, with the meals we choose to eat and the places we choose to shop. We're creating. So I think art and being an artist has a very broad definition. I think pulling yourself out and having that like 10,000 feet perspective is what I like to call it, and just really looking at the broad picture and the broad strokes. You don't have to have your hands on a tangible art material to call yourself an artist. If you are affecting someone else's life through a conversation you're having with them, you're an artist. It's just a different perspective of that definition. So that's how I like to view it.
I want to agree with you. I took a class last semester called Art and Society, and we really talked about how really anything in your life can be art, whether it's architecture or we talked about fashion can be art and makeup can be art. And I do think that we're all a little artistic, we're all a little creative. I know I'm creative in my event planning that I do for the sorority, creative in multiple different things. So I agree that we're all a little bit of artists.
I agree too with that. I do consider myself an artist. I consider myself an artist in a more well-rounded way, though. At my school, for my core classes, for my major, we have to take all the different core medium classes of art, like photography, theater, art history, graphic design, color and design, drawing, ceramics, oil painting, and then I took piano, and I'm in the choir. And I think lots of different things, like Erica was saying, there's so many different things that count as art. Like even being an English major, like writing is a type of art. My sister is a creative writing major, and I consider that a type of art. And anybody that can make something beautiful or talk about something beautiful and impact somebody in a beautiful way is definitely an artist in my eyes. And there's just different types of levels of being an artist in my eyes. And for me, being an artist is therapeutic, and everything that I do is just beautiful in my eyes. So.
So one thing that I guess I want to note is the difference between being a professional artist and an artist. I think we're all artists, but working. So Art Mix is located in the Harrison Center, which is full of professional artists, and so for me, being someone with no professional training or formal training, it's really intimidating to try to consider myself to be an artist when I'm surrounded by these amazing professional artists who sell their art all around the world. So it's, I think we're definitely all capable of creating and being creative and expressing yourself through something, whether it's a visual art or movement or dance, singing, or just through words. So I think whether it doesn't matter what your art form is, you can definitely be an artist.
Wonderful. I love all these. I'm writing all this down as fast as I can. So art is creation. We create every day, making something beautiful for someone else and being an artist of your own life. If not that, what else, right? Wonderful. Thank you for letting me throw you a question that you weren't necessarily prepared in advance to answer. So tell us a little bit, and a couple of you already talked a little bit about this, but how art allows you to express yourself more fully.
So I can express myself through art in a lot of different ways. From my injury, I have a lot of pain and sorrow that I felt through that, and I was able to express that in my photography by telling people to do different emotions with their faces or using different types of colors in my oil paint, like more cool colors for a more melancholy feel, or brighter colors, obviously, like for a more happy feel, like that. I do tend to lean more towards lighter and brighter colors now, because I feel like I'm at a different point in my life where I'm more happy to be myself, especially around all of my friends. And I have a more positive outlook on life since my injury. And one of my major track for studio art at Franklin College is ceramics, and I like being able to work with the clay and bend it into different shapes or something that you would recognize in nature, that I can form right in front of my eyes, and I did that, and it's something that I created, so it brings a type of different emotional energy into the room for me, and I feel like I am more myself when I'm creating art, and I've never felt like that before, except for when I was playing volleyball before. And most of my art allows me to express words through the creation of something instead of saying it out loud again, like I mentioned earlier. But it's just being able to create something for me is magical, and it makes things more interesting in our world to have art around us.
I would say in high school, it was really about escaping, into a different world for a little bit, with theater and choir, and becoming someone else. But I would say now, I still have music in my life. Listen to music every day, and I think that the type of music you listen to may reflect an aspect of a personality or change a mood, and I think that that's a way it can express yourself too.
For me, last year in January, I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. So through my art, it's really helped me to work through some of those feelings and emotions. And I mean, on top of therapy and medication, those are good things. But the art has also helped me work through some of those things, to express myself, and to just express what I'm feeling, and putting it out there, and then going back and reflecting on it is also helpful to see that this is where I was and this is where I am now, and the process that I've gone through.
So part of the scholarship that Gayle mentioned that I'm in, One of the very first things we do is take a Strengths Quest test, which maybe some of you are familiar with. But we also took the VIA, which is Values in Action. And we really learned about the things that that we find highly valuable. And for me, one of those is appreciation of beauty and nature. So I mentioned that, through the stressful periods of my life, I always found myself kind of going to learning some sort of little creative activity. At one point in time, it was jewelry making. Another point in time, I got into like paper coil. I would do like upcycled magazine picture frames and just, I don't want to say it's a mindless activity, but it's an activity that lets you pull away from the heaviness of everyday life that can be happening. And so you can kind of lose yourself in these art projects. So when I finish my social work degree, I'll also have a pre-art therapy certificate. So like Annalise said, I do have an interest in the art therapy programs. I'm not sure that that's the track I will follow, but I really have a high interest of integrating some of the art therapy concepts into social work. What I've landed on where I really found my passion is photography. And then I do sometimes take portrait photography for if someone asks me, like Gayle. But what I really like to do is get out in nature and hike and take pictures of nature and landscape. So, and for me, I think the other piece where Katie said about the reflections, so, you can get out in the woods or wherever I am. I'll pull off the side of the road at 5:30 in the morning on my way to work because the sunset, or the sunrise, is, I have to stop and take a picture. And my son, Andrew, on our way to IUPUI, he's like, "Mom, like, really?" I'm like, "Yes, really, it has to happen." I can't help myself. I can reflect back on those photos over the course of the past several years. And like Katie said, you really kind of see where you've grown personally, kind of where you've come from, what things you still focus on. So for me, sunrises and sunsets, I'm kind of obsessed. But maybe where I was taking a lot of pictures of flowers, now it's tree bark or something random. But it's an escape, and it's an integral part of who I am and what I value. And you have to honor that. So even when you're going through life with the stresses of either having a disability or having a family member with a disability, and just life in general, it really provides an outlet in some way.
Thank you. I'm struck by the fact that a couple of you have been talking about reflecting on your artwork has also been part of that creative process for you. So not just the creation of the original piece, but then the reflection that happens. So what do you see as the major challenges facing the arts and or the disability communities?
National funding. I think that's one of the biggest problems is that there's a threat to funding to a lot of programs that provide a foundation to families and people with disabilities. I think that we can all speak to the therapeutic value, the social connections value, and the list goes on and on. Unfortunately, our current administration doesn't see the high value in that. So we need voices, we need votes, and we need people to really advocate for the arts. So that's my biggest concern and biggest threat against that right now.
Yeah, I think just to echo what Erica said, funding is a huge thing. When you work for a nonprofit, you realize that funding is everything. You can't do anything without money. And so putting value into the arts is so important. The arts are such a big part of the Indianapolis community, and they should be a big part of any community. They bring joy and life to a community. So funding is huge.
And I just want to add to that really quickly. I think that we have groups of people who are in socioeconomic places that don't allow access to some of the higher levels of therapies and medical care. When you can go in and take an art class for a free or reduced price, you're connecting socially. It's a sense of pride. The therapeutic value exceeds, in my opinion, much of what even the medical community can offer. So I think it's really, really important to focus on the fact that we're serving people who we may not realize the impact and the value that these programs have on their lives and on the lives of the people that they're connected to and their families, et cetera. It's a far-reaching organization, and the arts touch everyone's lives in some way. So I think that's important to recognize as well.
One thing, sorry. I just want to say that like the arts shouldn't be just for the privileged. They should be for everyone. It shouldn't matter what your income level is. You should be able to access the arts, and I mean, you should have basic human rights and access to things, but the arts should be included in that.
I just want to piggyback off that. I would say that one of the major challenges for the arts and disabilities community is that it's very separated, and a lot of times people would say like, oh, like your age, your young people don't go to an opera, or low-income people can't go to an opera, where it'd be, I would like to see in the future, anyone can and anyone should want to, or have the opportunity to, and I think that separation is one of the major challenges.
I agree with funding. I don't think we can express how important funding is, especially Kathy would know about that. That's her job. But I also think in order to go with funding, like we have to have the resources and be up to date with the different things out there that can help the disabled to be able to do different things. Like one really cool thing at Art Mix is we have this wheel that you can throw on that people in wheelchairs can use, and it can go like up or down, so like the person in the wheelchair can be able to throw on the wheel at whatever level that they're at. And that was the first thing that I saw when I went into the ceramic studio, and Gayle showed it to me, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever, because I believe that everybody, like what Katie was saying, everybody should be able to access the arts, especially the disabled, and they should be able to have the easiest and most comfortable way to access it too, in order to be able to create and grow from that experience. I also think it's really important for everybody in general to know how to act when they're around the disabled community in the art, especially the disabled community in the arts. One thing that really stuck with me that I learned in my internship that probably Linda, Kathy, Katie, and Gayle all told me was one thing that I really learned was that you have to put when you're talking about somebody who has a disability, you put the person before the disability. You would say, if you're talking about a boy with autism, you say the boy who has autism and not the autistic boy. So that's really important to me, to talk about it in the most respectful way you can.
Well, to piggyback on that, to borrow the phrase here, I think the coolest thing ever is that you said we at Art Mix. As you might recall when I was introducing everyone, Annalise was our intern in January. We still want her to come and volunteer, but she's not our current intern, but she still says we. That's lovely. Thank you. So we're running a little close on time, so I actually want to skip to the last question and then see if there are any questions that people have that they want to ask. And if we have time, then we'll come back to the one that I'm skipping over. But one question that we put on here was, what would be one piece of advice or an idea or thought that you want to share with everyone tonight as it relates to the personal stories that you've shared tonight about art and disability?
So for me, what I want to share is that when you think you've hit the lowest lowest point in your life, please know that you have the strength and the goodness inside of you to conquer the obstacles that face you. Always ask for help when you need it. Always tell people what's going on, and communicate what you're going through, because that can only benefit you. Doing that always made me feel safer wherever I was and wherever I went. And the fact that all of my friends know, and basically like 3/4 of the campus, like my campus is really small, and like basically 3/4 of the campus like knows about my brain injury that I've had, and it's really cool to just be able to go everywhere and feel safe. Finally, I would find what makes you happy and what sets your soul on fire, and then never stop chasing it, and don't let anything, even a disability in your life or in somebody else's life close to you, get in the way of your dreams. So yeah.
I know it's cliche, but I would say don't judge a book by its cover. Really challenge yourself to think about how you interact with people who have disabilities, about how you think about it, how you speak about people who have disabilities. Just be mindful of that.
I would say don't be afraid to approach people and have conversations and ask questions. I know that there's kind of this stigma that you just kind of watch from afar, but you're not really sure what to say or what to ask. Don't be afraid to ask and reach out and make friends. And then our house rules are, and this is the advice I would give anyone, they're the only standing house rules we have. Be nice and have fun. And if you're doing that, then most often everything else will fall into place.
So my biggest piece of advice, and I tell this to a lot of people, is it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to not tell someone. So it's, especially going through anxiety and depression, it's really hard to talk about those things, and it's a challenge, but it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to have stresses and to feel uncomfortable, but it's not okay to not talk about it, and not tell someone that you're struggling. So always find someone that you can confine in, or go see a doctor, or talk to your parents, but do something, because it's okay, but you don't have to live like that. You don't have to continue to struggle.
All right, so where are the questions that you've been forming in your mind listening to all of this? I know they're out there.
Well, first of all, just it's very insightful, and the courage that you each have inside of you, and how you've sort of formed a very deep wisdom of human knowledge and a base of energy is just very impressive. So I would love to hear, though, how you have taken that energy and that wisdom that you've learned from your disability. Has it shaped or bent or transformed a relationship, either with a friend you had before you knew about what you were dealing with, or someone who came into your life, or someone else with a disability that you were able to impact as a mentor?
So I'll start off and say that, again, through my scholarship, I actually served as a mentor for 2 years, and I did work with a young lady with a disability. She was actually hearing impaired, and I think that the approachable part that I spoke about just this last time, you're not sure, I'm not, I don't use sign language very well, and I wasn't sure, like, do I talk really loud? Do I, like, make sure I'm looking at her? So it was this, like, awkward, getting to know, like, that comfort level in that space. But once we developed that rapport, she still reaches out to me today. We're still very close, and sort of those barriers just fell away. So also part of the scholarship, one of the criteria to actually to be qualified for the scholarship is to have a physical disability. So we also have one of our scholars who is paraplegic, and learning how to communicate with her. So it's interesting because, you know, I have sons in my own life who have disabilities, and it's just like this normal, for lack of better terms, like there's no, you know, I just talk to them and our relationship is just what it is. That's not like a factor. But then when I'm learning to communicate with other people, that approaching factor, like, do I give her a hug? You know, like I'm hugging all these other scholars and I love her and she's a close friend of mine. But I mean, do you walk up to someone who's in a wheelchair and paraplegic and can't hug you back? And I did. Like, I gave her a hug, and I give her a hug every time I see her, and I kiss her on the forehead, and I like pose her so we can take cool pictures together. And so we've developed this relationship. It's that not being afraid to just like approach and ask, like, can I give you a hug? How does that work? And you know, just take the stigma away from having those conversations with others.
So one of the first things that came to mind was one of our students at Art Mix, whose name is also Katie. She has become like this awesome person for me. She comes to our Wednesday classes, and I always make sure that I go down to the studio and give her a hug. And sometimes I just sit there for the whole class and like hold her hand while she's doing art. But it's forming that relationship came very naturally for me because of growing up with my sister and also having a disability. I can relate to a lot of our students, and even though their disabilities may be different than mine or what my sister has, it's easier to kind of overcome some of those barriers that others might face. But I'd like to echo what Erica said, is just asking. Asking if something's okay. That's okay to do. It's better than just assuming. So, yeah.
I would say a lot of the relationships that I've made, most people don't realize that I have a disability until I tell them. And so throughout middle school and high school, I attended the University of Michigan Brachial Plexus Palsy Camp. And through that, I was able to meet other girls who had the same disability that I do. And it was really cool to, get their different perspectives. And, each injury is so different. It was, not many people have this. And it was cool to be able to hear the different experiences that everyone else has and actually have someone to talk to that knew how it was.
So before my brain injury, I had 3 or 4 concussions before. So random people that know me personally will randomly come up to me if they get a concussion and just ask me random questions about it, and I'll be able to help them with it. But the most important person that I've ever met since my brain injury was a year and a half into it, and I met this kid. Well, I had known him before, and his name's Pete, and I think he's a freshman in high school now, but he has Down syndrome, and he's this really cool, energetic kid. And I went to grade school with his 2 twin brothers, and his mom really needed help that one summer, and I was with him every week for a couple of days, and I really connected with him, and I actually kind of got him into art, into drawing and stuff, and he still does that to this day. And I feel like I could connect with him on a deeper level and be able to have conversations with him and be able to play with him all the time. And it was the coolest thing because he has a huge backyard, and we would go into his backyard, and first we would pray together, and then we would talk to this group of football players all in front of us that was imaginary, and we would say things to them, and then we would go out into the field and pretend like we were their coaches, and it was the coolest thing ever. And he would walk up and down, and he'd be yelling at random football players that aren't there, and telling me to go to talk to this one guy or whatever and tell him to do this and get a touchdown. And it's the funniest thing ever, but it's the coolest relationship I've ever had with somebody, and I will never forget him.
We're really close on time. Is there one last question from the audience? Something you're dying to know, to ask? No? All right. Well, I want to leave a little time for the surveys that we really do want your feedback on. But I just have to say, echoing your comments, thank you, Stuart. One of my favorite quotes is that vulnerability is the birthplace of creativity. And I am so impressed with how vulnerable these four women have been with you all. And I know some of there's friends here for everyone, so that's good. But still, you know, it's hard to get up in front of a group and talk, let alone talk about your own personal story. So thank you all very, very much, and please help me thank them for their stories. So thank you for being here tonight. We have a hot chocolate bar in the back. It is a little cold out, even though it's the first day of spring. So please help yourself to hot chocolate. And please complete a survey. You can do that with paper and pen, or can we use the iPads?
Yeah.
Okay, we can use the iPads. Once you've completed the survey, you'll get a coupon where you can come shop with us, and you'll want to come shop with us. So thank you again for being here.